I started my career as a software developer. I did it for a very brief stint for 2 years. And then I sort of transitioned into project management. I'm just going to share my screen, so you let me know if you're able to see it. Can you see my screen?
Looks good.
Okay, let me just make it full screen. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so as I was saying, I started my career as a software developer, and I worked as a backend developer actually for 2 years, and then I transitioned into project management quite accidentally. And I think project management and even to some extent product management are similar in that respect, that they are not aspirational roles. Like very few people when they're growing up, like when you're 7 years old, will say that they wanted to be a project manager or a product manager. Yeah, so we all sort of find our way into these fields. And for me, one of the reasons that I got involved in project management is I was still interested in software product development, but I wanted to sort of not be the developer. And I started as a project assistant, and I wanted to find, like, basically to help the developers to do their work well. And when I first started, one of the things that will frustrate me very much is that for project managers, the holy grail is finishing your project on scope, on time, and on budget. So actually, none of my projects were finished on scope, on time, and on budget. And for me, it was very frustrating. So I thought it was like a skills issue, that I didn't have enough knowledge, that project managers elsewhere must know something that I don't know. And so I started learning about how to deliver software more efficiently and more economically and more predictably. And this took me on a journey of one, self-discovery, and also discovering how product development work is actually done, and also how software product development work especially is done, and how software teams can work together to ensure that work is actually done in a way that is keeps everyone happy and delivers the most value to the end user. So for me today, really that is the focus of my presentation, about this other PM role and how it fits into the other product development activities. And I know, yeah, when you say the other PM role, I actually think product managers are the other PMs, because project managers have been around for years, forever. So yeah, but for the sake of this conversation, I just want to help you understand how teams that have a product manager and a project manager can work together to ensure that the work is done well, and in a way that you respect each other's boundaries and is efficient. So I'll start by defining a project. The difference between project and product management is projects are temporary endeavors. So projects have a start date and an end date, and it's anything that is undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. So project managers work in all fields, from construction to newspaper printing to in restaurants, basically anywhere where there's a product being delivered, a service being delivered, or an end result expected, and it's temporary, that will fall under the definition of a project. And project management then is the application of that body of knowledge, and then of the skills, tools, and techniques to meet the project requirements. As I mentioned, for the project manager, the holy grail is actually delivering your project on scope, on time, and on budget. So you save the person paying the bill money, and at the same time you finish it within the time you agreed, and you also do not overextend your boundaries. And this is referred to as the iron triangle of project management, because for each of those spokes of the triangle, if you move one of the things, the other has to move. So if you change the scope, it means you have to increase the time and increase the budget. If you actually, scope is sort of like what underpins it. If you reduce the time when the project should be delivered, then the others must change. Either the scope must change or the budget must change. And similarly, if you reduce the budget, it affects the scope and it affects the timeline. So for project managers, that is actually the holy grail, and like project management education is centered around ensuring that you finish the projects on time, on scope, and on budget. So for if you look at, this is from the Project Management Institute Agile Practice Guide. So what I've just described works for simple projects. So projects that have low uncertainty, and they also have low technical uncertainty and low requirement uncertainty. So by simple, I don't mean that they are easy projects, but that their requirements are simple to understand, and that the technical expertise needed is also simple to understand. You'll find a lot of not a lot of, let me just say, some construction projects fall here. So for example, if you want to build a house, the requirements, once that thing is set, like it is agreed, this is the house we are building, the requirements probably won't change. And in terms of like once an approach is agreed on, once like the house has actually started coming up, that also won't change. So like as I said, when I started doing project management, I noticed that software projects actually fall in this quadrant. So most of them are complicated or complex, and some of them were chaos actually. And so these traditional approaches work here, where you can draw your Gantt charts, and you can write all the requirements, and you can put dates on all your requirements, and you're sure that these projects will be finished within scope, within time, and within budget. But as I mentioned, software projects don't fall here. They fall in this area. So for these sort of projects, you need more adaptive approaches. If you've taken a software engineering course, you know for software requirements, you can start developing the software, not even if you've taken a software engineering course, if you've ever developed anything in your life, even if it's an HTML page, you know that as soon as you start the work, more requirements come up, more information becomes available, and so the requirements are usually have a high degree of uncertainty. And even if you cast the requirements in stone, so like for the projects that I used to do, sometimes I will say, oh, we are freezing requirements, and you will do it and you finish the work, but at the end of the day, the customer isn't happy. So software projects have a high degree of requirement uncertainty. And then there's also a high degree of technical uncertainty, because one, technology is always evolving. And then two, there's not a standard one size fits all approach for software projects. So there are a multitude of languages, a multitude of frameworks, a multitude of skill levels of developers. And so this can look anything from very easy for one group of developers. Sorry, yes?
Mercy, sorry to cut you off a little bit. Some people are wondering whether we are still on the first slide or we've moved on, because we are stuck on the initial slide.
Okay, let me just try and fix that. Can you see it now?
Yes, now it's good.
Oh. Let me go to full screen again and you tell me whether you can see it. Can you see it now?
I think that's a problem. When you go to full screen, we are still stuck on the initial page.
Okay, so you guys will have to see these things on the side, I guess. Or let me just stop the share and try again. If that's okay with you guys.
Yep.
Share my entire screen, because I was just sharing. And now? Can you see?
We're seeing the doc, but it's on page 3. So we're not really sure if you move out as you move the whatever, if it's changing.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Just give me a minute. Sorry, let me just fix that. Okay. And now, can you see?
Yep, works brilliantly.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so as I was saying, sorry, well, now that you can see the graph, I'm sure you understand what I was talking about. So most traditional projects fall in this quadrant, and all the innovative work that people like Henry Grant, Frederick Taylor, fathers of project management did actually helped these projects improve. And to some extent also helped software projects in this complex and complicated area improve, but these projects were not ending successfully. So as I mentioned, adaptive approaches work well here because there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of the technical aspects of the project and in terms of requirements of the project. So for this project, we need a different way of thinking about them. And that's where I guess Agile came from, starting in the 1980s with the people who are doing Agile work even before Agile was called Agile. And then to the time when the manifesto was written in 2006, these Agile methods were trying to solve this area. And if you think about so Agile, even that's if you look at the Agile manifesto, and if you look at Scrum, and if you look at all these product development methodologies, they actually don't mention a project manager role. And so what some people took that to mean is now we actually don't need project managers, that the teams are self-organizing, and product owners and product managers should be able to handle project delivery without project managers. And so I think you will see, even for those teams, there are aspects of project management of the traditional project management that still need to happen. And even the quadrant that I mentioned, the budget is still important to stakeholders. The scope is also still important to stakeholders, and the timeline also, actually doing what you say you promise to do, honoring your commitments, is still important to stakeholders. And so like there's a tension there with the product teams wanting to focus on maximizing value for the customer and these things that I've mentioned. So as I mentioned, there was a broken layer. Let me know if you can't see my screen. I don't know, I've shifted to another slide. So there is a broken layer of project management that existed that was stopping these projects from being successful. So if you look at how people think about project management traditionally, as I said, people do these charts with requirements and with timelines and like with dates, and basically just project managers basically just go down that list, ticking, asking the development teams, have you finished this thing? And actually not thinking about how the software is delivered. So there's a book I've put in here, which is a really good book if you're involved in product development of any kind, whether it's software, hardware. It's a really good book. I highly recommend it. And he talks about the challenge with this model. So the first thing is we don't correctly quantify economics. By economics, I mean how traditionally we were looking at project management is we have a plan, we have a timeline, and we say we need this thing done by this date. But what happens when, for example, we have to make trade-offs, when something is going to be late? So what usually happens is the project manager will say, we have a deadline, we have to push ourselves to finish this deadline. But if you think about the economics of product delivery, and you have features that you are rolling out, you need to think about how much it costs to deliver that feature, and how much it costs to delay it, and how much it costs vis-a-vis the other things on your schedule. So as opposed to just blindly saying, we need this thing done, why do we need this thing done, and what is the value in terms of the order of value? So that was one of the issues. The other thing is also traditional methods are blind to queues. So if you look at a method like waterfall, for example, even some agile methods actually, we have work that's waiting to be done, but we don't know how much work is before that work and how much work time is spending in a queue. And I'll give you a very good example. If you go to a hospital, the first thing that you do when you get there, okay, other than being sick and doing your paperwork, if you want to know how long it will take you to get served, you look at how many people are in the queue. If you go to a supermarket and you want to know how long you'll be served, when we used to pay power at Kenya Power, you will check the queue and you will know how long it's going to take you to be served. But interestingly, we understand this intrinsically. We understand how long work takes to be done is dependent on the work queue. But when we are scheduling our work, we don't actually put the work in queues. So we just have work that needs to be done, and we keep on ticking our tasks, but we are not checking how much time is work spending in the queue, how much time is work waiting, how much time does each item spend in each queue. So methods like Kanban actually do that, and people who use Kanban boards, that's what they're trying to do, to expose those queues and the inefficiencies in the process, and looking at things like cycle time, how long it takes an item to go from beginning to end, lead time, how long it takes once the item is picked up for it to be finished. So traditional project management doesn't care about this. Then, as I mentioned, for project managers, we don't care traditionally about value. We don't care about the product that is built. What we care is that it is finished on time, it is finished on schedule, and it is finished on budget. And so there's this worship of efficiency, of ensuring that we save as much money as possible, we do it in as short time as possible, and we do it in an efficient manner. And you will see, you product people should know John Cutler. He's one of my favorite thought leaders. And he talks about something called playing Tetris. So when you look at a week, you fit in work in that week, even for people who do Scrum. In the sprint, you fit in tasks to make sure there is no slack time, and people are working at 100% efficiency. But what this does is it reduces the ability for your team to innovate, because they are focused on just getting features out and churning work out. And then there's a hostility to variability. So for project managers, when they hear that we are not going to finish on time, that is like the worst possible thing you could say. And there's that hostility to variability. And sometimes we put for ourselves arbitrary deadlines, like no one is going to die if the thing is delivered 3 days later and a higher quality or a higher value thing is delivered. But because we put for us arbitrary constraints, there's that hostility to variability. And if a project isn't finished on time, that is considered a failure from a project management perspective. And then there's a worship of conformance. So there's how work has been done, and there's the expectation that this is how we do the work. So even when teams know, as I mentioned, when I was working previously before, actually at the time I was working at iHub Consulting, and I knew that something is broken with our Scrum, something is broken with the way we are delivering software. But it's almost like zombie scrum. Like you know, this is how we've always done it, and we need to ensure that we conform, and when we conform, we'll get the outcomes that we want. And then there's an inflexibility, which is related to this thing. So you're basically saying we are not changing the plan regardless of what happens, regardless of what new information becomes available. Another problem that I've seen is institutionalization of large batch sizes. So when I was a young project manager, software developers are good people, and they will tell you, I will have this done on Friday. And so, and if you ask them every day, they basically get like it's almost as if you're bugging them basically. And so I would allow it. I would allow like someone just saying, I'm going to build the entire front end. And once he gets the designs, he goes and sits somewhere for 3 weeks and then produces work without fail. Every time we did that, without fail, we were late. So because people generally don't know how to quantify work and complexity when it's so large. When you say we are going to just build this monolith of a feature, and we need to be able to slice work thinly. And traditional project management, as I say, we don't care about that. If you have these large batch sizes, as long as the work gets done on time and you have your Gantt chart, you can tick that work as done. And this is related to this second one. So cadence basically means how, like a regular heartbeat, almost a regular pattern. So underutilization of cadence basically means not taking advantage of regular meetings, regular checkpoints, regular check-ins, and just having ad hoc meetings whenever, like if we have a client demo, or if the boss asks, and then now we start rushing to have meetings. And methods like Scrum, XP with pair programming are trying to increase the touch points and ensure that teams are meeting regularly. And then I've talked about this a lot. So managing timelines instead of queues. So instead of caring about how much work is in the queue, project managers usually manage timelines. And then absence of work in progress constraints. So having people have a lot of work in progress and not constraining it. And you find, if you've worked in a software team before, without that work in progress constraints, you have people holding 5 tasks, 7 tasks at the same time. And realistically speaking, you can only be working at one of those tasks at a time. So work keeps on staying in queues and it's not actually being worked on. So you have a Kanban board, you have a title there labeled in progress, but the work is not in progress because people are context switching between tasks. And then the biggest, I think this is the biggest problem with project management as a field, is centralized control. And project management traditionally is about control. And if you look at the history of project management, and even like things like the fathers of project management, Frederick Taylor, Henry Gantt, their thinking was people are like machines. So they were optimizing for machines that they need to be controlled to be able to get work done. And they need someone to control them and to ensure that they are doing work. And if you look at traditional project management, that is the focus, like that is the power the project manager has to control the project scope, to control the budget, to control the delivery timelines. And so for product development and for product managers, these are the things that bring that tension and bring the tension between product teams and program teams, because for product teams, the focus is more on the value as opposed to the things that I have just gone through. So this is an illustration from a book by Jim Highsmith called Agile Project Management. So this is the traditional project management iron triangle. And as I mentioned, this hasn't been working for software projects. And so some teams move to this second phase where it's cost, scope, and then the schedule is what is fixed. So you'll find teams that are in this phase will say, we will not change the schedule, but so saying we will deliver for you this project in 3 months, but what we will deliver in that 3 months, we are not sure about the scope, and we are not sure about how much it will cost. So this is still not good enough, because it's still underpinned by these metrics, which, as I mentioned, are broken when you think about software products. Because at the end of the day, even like right now I work at Tala, no Tala user cares how long the feature took to be built, how long it cost Tala to get it to the table, and how many other features were scoped out. At the end of the day, what customers and the business cares about is ensuring that we are providing value, and that is customer value and business value. So project management for agile project managers has moved from it being about cost, scope, and schedule to it being about value, quality, and the constraints that you have. And these constraints will include things like this cost, the scope, the schedule, but ultimately the most important things is ensuring that you provide value and you provide quality within these constraints. So if you think about it like that, essentially project and product managers want the same thing. It's just that our focus is on different things. So as I mentioned, within the last 20 or so years, teams have been moving away from project thinking and have stopped funding project teams to start funding product teams. So as opposed to having teams that only come together for the project disbanded, we have product teams where work is brought to the team, and then so there are initiatives running within the product team. And so, like for example, at Tala, this is how we actually run our projects. We have product teams that don't change, and they stay in year in, year out. Like for my duration at Tala, I'd probably be in that team, but the projects are the ones that change. So every quarter we have new projects, we do new projects. And this is because of the things that I've mentioned. So the focus of project thinking is delivery. Project managers traditionally care about delivery, and when work is organized in projects, it enables that kind of thinking. So this could be the delivery of features, software, anything. And because the focus is delivery, the primary measurement is on the timeline and schedule. And as I mentioned, these are proxy metrics because how fast you deliver a feature isn't an indicator of value, or how well you adhered to the schedule isn't an indicator of customer value and of business value. So product thinking focuses on the goal we want to achieve or the job to be done, and then we are focused on the outcome rather than the output, which I'm sure you guys have heard about before. So it is very difficult to put time constraints around the delivery, at least upfront. So for project teams working with product managers, it's a tension, because as I said, project managers, what we care about is delivery. And I am focused on delivering the work on budget, on time, and on scope. But product managers are focused on the outcome and ensuring that we are providing customer value. So as I said, it is a tension, and it requires a lot skills that I don't even think can be taught. You have to sometimes just lean into it and grow as a project manager and grow as a product manager. So for both teams, for both guilds, for both, however, departments, however you call them, wherever you work, there is a need to stretch and to sort of accommodate the other person, and to work together and to respect each other's boundaries. So I think if you think about it like that, you will see why there is that ambiguity between what do project managers do and what do product managers do, because we are sort of doing the same thing. And it's interesting because even within the teams that I work with and with the stakeholders I work with, there is that lack of nuance for the different roles. So sometimes like I will be in a meeting and the product manager isn't available and I'm asked to give the product update, and I'm like, I have no idea. And like even within like where I work right now, there is still that lack of clarity between what exactly do the program team do and what do the product team do, because as I said, we are very closely tied together and we do sort of the same things but focusing on different areas. So what I wanted to say is not all organizations look like this. Not all organizations have project managers. And as I said, after Agile came, it was like death to project management. And people said, we don't want project managers anymore. So there are actually many organizations that don't have project managers. So the thing is, project management is happening, whether someone has a title called project manager or not. So all your product management work has some level of project management, because as I said, at the end of the day, we have to keep things moving along. People care about delivering actual work. People care about predictability. People care that when teams say we'll deliver this thing by this quarter. If, for example, one of the projects I've worked on was an app for rating wines and spirits, and it was meant to be launched on St. Patrick's Day. Yeah, and so you see, like, for example, that app, it was very important that everything is done by St. Patrick's Day. So at the end of the day, people care about dates. Like in our self-organizing teams, we might optimize for software delivery, but the truth is software development is a very small bit of the value stream. Like there's a whole other world outside just the software team or the product team that exists, that has realities. And so we need to consider those things and ensure that we are delivering things in a way that respects the business and our stakeholders and our customers. And as I said, this is a very wide topic, and where to start from is fixing these things. So starting to think about how we are delivering the software, and starting to think about not just honoring timelines, but ensuring we are working in a very efficient way. I don't want to say efficiency because literally my third point is worship of efficiency, but in a way that maximizes value for the business and for the customers. And as I said, this is a very wide topic, and a lot of books have been written on this. And you can, if you're not familiar with Agile methodologies, you can start there. You can also look into lean methodologies, which have also looked into this. And the book that I've mentioned here, again, for product managers, it's a very, very good resource. So how then can project management support product management? So I got this from Tala, but it basically just illustrated what I wanted to say, so I added it here. I don't like these terms because they sort of assume product and project managers have all this power over the product, and usually we don't. Usually there are other people making the decisions. There are other people, business stakeholders. There are other leaders in the organization who make decisions that affect the product. So you can see here, actually, they wrote leadership without power. So usually project and product managers are given constraints. So you're given a budget, you're given a team. Sometimes you don't get everything that you want. So you're leading, but you don't have the power to do things however you want to do. So if you think about a project and a product, product managers like saying that product managers are like the CEO of the product, and project managers focus on operations. So we focus on delivery. And for a project, so if you look at the lifetime of a product, so even using like the Tala app for an example, inside that product life cycle, there are many, many initiatives we roll out. And so the project managers are usually in charge of ensuring the delivery of the product vision. The vision that the product manager has is done in a way that honors those constraints I've mentioned. And then, so product managers own the why and the what. So they focus on the product vision. And for project managers, we focus on the how and when. So we'll focus on how work delivery is organized and when will it be delivered, status reporting, timelines. That's where the project manager sits. And then product managers focus is mainly on the customer and the end user of the application. And if you look at the metrics that product managers care about, they sit in this space. And for us, we care for how basically the team that we have, the resources that we have, what we are going to deliver, how much time it's going to take, how much it's going to cost. And so for these things, I report to my stakeholders and clients on this, on like, did we maximize business value? Did we do it in as cheap a way as possible? How much is it going to cost? While the product people focus on the customer and the user. So project managers drive structure and efficiency. So the structure of how the work is done, and as I keep on mentioning, this worship of efficiency, and that work, we're not wasting time, we are not context switching, we are not doing poor quality work. While product managers focus on market competitive research, and this is an aspect of industry knowledge. So sometimes you see project management being lumped in as a soft skill, and while there are those aspects that are very hard to quantify, at the end of the day, you do need industry knowledge for the industry you operate in, and you need to have industry expertise. So if you're building a fintech app, you need to understand how the finance industry works to an extent, but you also need to understand, for us especially, how technology works. So as I mentioned, project management in the way I've described it is a subset of software engineering. So you do need to have industry knowledge. And then there are technical skills around each role. And so for us, it's around the project plan, timelines, budget, and these are our iron triangle again. So we have the time, the budget, and the scope. And product managers focus on these different things. So then the primary artifact for product managers is the strategy and roadmap plans. And for us, it's ensuring that information is flowing to the right people in a timely manner. If you look at an organization, as I said, software development is a very small aspect of the value stream. So we do have other people, other stakeholders. So if you're building something and you need data science to weigh in, you need business intelligence to weigh in, you need the people who write the credit algorithms to weigh in, ensuring that that information is flowing to everyone in a timely manner and that everyone is aware of the project status. And then so also project managers make sure team has the right tools and infrastructure in place to work. Project managers create psychological safety, ensuring that team members feel they are respected within the team, that they are able to contribute, that they are not being disturbed. Part of a right environment is also protecting the team from outside requests and ensuring that they are able to do their work without having stakeholders contact them directly. And then, so some of these things we share with product managers as well. So something like having group discussions to ensure cross-functional interaction and optimization. So there are product managers who also would want to do that and ensure that, like even as they're coming up with their roadmaps and their plans, that they are facilitating these conversations, but we also will end up doing that. And the most important thing is, for a project manager, success is meeting the timeline and meeting the budget. PJM is successful if the product is successfully delivered and the company didn't make a loss and we didn't take 5 years to do it. And for product managers, success is evaluated on the success of the product as opposed to success of the project. So for all of these roles, again, there's a lot of ambiguity. There's a lot of like even when you look at, we at Tala, we have something similar to this, because as I say, there's a lot of ambiguity. And even there's ambiguity, because if you see something like status report has been put under project management, but launch communication is put under product management. So it does take the teams that are working together to ensure that you are working closely together every day and communicating every day, and ensuring that you're respecting each other's boundaries and you're not stepping into each other's shoes. So I guess like if the one, even understanding, like having empathy for the fact that for project managers, what we care about is these things, and me having empathy for customer value and ensuring that the product is a success and working together towards these goals. A final note that I will say around this is, as I said, there are places that one person does both of these things. And because of constraints, budget, etc., the size of the team, if you have a team of just 3 people, for example, sometimes there's no budget for this, like having 2 separate roles. But at the end of the day, you will find that they are distinct roles. And usually, especially as the team scales, if you will find if you're not, if one person is doing this, like if I was to do the product management, because I am a project manager by training, I will tend to fall on this side. And then again, sometimes if you are a product manager by training, you will tend to sort of be biased to the product manager side. So usually, when they're done by 2 people, especially as an organization scales, the ball ends up being dropped, because really both of these are full-time jobs and both of these are very demanding. But sometimes there are realities and you have to do one or the other. So it's a reality, but just thinking about these things and thinking about the different aspects will help you to sort of realize these are product tasks, but I also need to think about these other things. So as an organization scales, it becomes more and more difficult to handle both of these. And you will find a lot of organizations, especially with larger products, do have either this role has different names. So either a project manager or a program manager, to sort of bridge the gap between the business and the rest of the software team. And I think, like, if for me the most important takeaway I would like for you to think about is to challenge your beliefs on project management, especially how it's traditionally taught, and to start thinking about okay, this is how project management has been done for 100 years, but are there better ways? And so you will find, like, even in the role that I'm playing, as much as my title is project manager, I don't do my work in the way the project management body of knowledge has specified, just because it doesn't work for our specific context. So in conclusion, again, as I mentioned, in many organizations, the person managing projects may not have the title project manager. So all of us manage projects every day, and it's important to think about all these other tasks that we're doing that will fall under project management, and realize that there is actually a body of knowledge around this. There's a ton of resources on the internet that can help you to navigate this, and you don't have to have the title project manager to actually be the one making those changes and saying the way we deliver software is broken and there is a better way. So I will stop at that point and get feedback from you if you have any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Mercy. I think we can open up the space for the attendees to ask questions. There is one question from Nyambura who says, we know that Scrum teams are meant to be self-organizing and self-sustaining. Do you think businesses should move more towards having product managers and Scrum masters with great project management skills and do away with project manager roles?
Yeah, so I will say if you're following Scrum by the book, Scrum actually doesn't have project managers as a role. And as project manager will not be part of the Scrum team. Even when I attend the daily Scrum, I don't contribute because I'm not a part of the Scrum team. So project managers do, Scrum teams need other things that they can't handle by themselves, especially as the team scales. So as I mentioned, sometimes you have very many stakeholders. You have like 50 people who need to be informed on what is going on, whose feedback needs to be gotten, whose input needs to be gotten, who you need to ensure you're consistently updating. And that is also not a Scrum Master role. And sometimes that is also not a product manager role because it is mostly status reporting and dependency management. And so I will say for smaller organizations, I personally, as I said, I firmly believe in this. If you're doing Scrum by the book, project managers are actually not part of the Scrum team. So it's thinking about it slightly different, sitting outside the Scrum, the team, and supporting the team to do their things with the things that aren't about software development, like updating the leadership team, for example, on budgets and on timelines and on project plans. That is not part of the Scrum team, and that is actually waste if you think about Lean, if I'm removing you from developing software to write reports. Yeah.
Cool. Guys, please shoot your questions for Mercy on the chat so that she can be able to answer them. Shiko Kimani says she's very thankful for the insightful presentation, Mercy. And she says, you have talked about project and product management. In your experience and current team, is the programs team involved in running projects in other areas beyond the product? For example, in internal business processes, people side, etc.
Yeah, so I would say Tala is slightly different because I will say at Tala, the engineering organization is at the center of the operations. And so even when we say project management, the program guild primarily serves the engineering guild. So all project managers at Tala work with engineers. We don't work with other teams. So they do their own project management, but we don't, like the project management guild was specifically introduced to support the engineering guild to deliver their engineering guild and product guild to deliver their product on time. But in other places I have worked, yes. Before I was at Tala, I was at Medic Mobile, and we did have project managers for different kinds. So like me, I was working with the software teams, but there were project managers working with at the field in the site where the app will be launched. And we had project managers working on marketing projects, on partnerships projects. So as I said, project management as a field is very wide, and it isn't limited to software development, but specifically for where I work right now and the skill set I have developed over the years, I primarily work with software teams, and at Tala, Program Guild serves the Product Guild exclusively. Yeah.
Cool. Purity, on your question about the slides, yes, we'll be sharing the slides to you guys after the talk. I have a question, Marcy. On your slide, there's a section where you're talking about how project managers or project management can be able to assist product management. And I think it was the fourth point about how project managers usually drive structure and efficiency. While on the other side, there was like product managers are doing market research and competitive research, right? So to product guys, you know, they usually have a lot of tools they use. And I'm just trying to think about, like, if you blend the two, product managers actually do, in a sense, do drive structure and efficiency because they're tracking all these deliverables through the tools that they're doing. So in a situation where you have a project manager and a product manager, and those two roles conflicting, and if in a situation, if they conflict, how would you solve that? How would you make it very clear that actually you're not making someone redundant because you're sharing the roles or responsibility?
So I do agree. Yeah, as I said, even with the organizations I've worked in the past, there is that tension between because you have your own tools and we have our tools. So one, I will say, one of the principles of Agile is individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, the most important thing is to ensure you are having a conversation about it and you're talking about it. But from an operational perspective, it is important to draw those boundaries, just to remove that extra overhead of each team having to figure out who does what. So, for example, where I work right now, product managers do decide the tools that they want to put their roadmap in. They decide how they want, for example, to share launch communications, how they want to do their user studies, how they want to interact with the users. But in terms of delivery processes, project managers are the ones who come up with the process. And so what that means is if there's a decision about something like Jira or Trello or Asana, it is the program guild that will provide that direction. If there's a decision about which team health metrics are being shared, decisions around communication tools, around the tools that focus on process delivery, the program guild provides those. And why I would say it is like that is because ideally we are the subject matter experts on process and operations. And so sometimes there is, if it has to do with delivery and how the software is delivered, the project managers will provide that direction. And if you, for example, want to do your roadmap things, you want to use product plan, you want to use Miro for your whiteboarding, you can do that. But for the delivery team, I think it is important to decide for your organization. If you want the product managers to be the ones to decide it, basically have a DRI, having someone who is responsible and having the person who's point on that, because it just makes it easier and makes working together a lot easier. Yeah.
Cool. You said something about people over processes, and that's a very product thinking. So I'm really happy that the project manager can say that. So that's really cool. I have one other question, still on the same slide. There's a section there that says product managers actually sort of like owning the strategy and the roadmap, right? Mm-hmm. And then, project management really is all about delivery, right? It's a timed endeavor, and the product manager is coming up with the roadmap essentially. So in your own experience, or generally speaking, is it that the project manager actually is guided by the timelines that the product manager is articulating, or how do the two work together to make sure that the timed element is there as far as the roadmap and strategy, or rather, as far as the roadmap is concerned?
Yeah, so I think one of the things I'm really grateful for with where I'm at right now is actually the privilege of working in a product-centered organization is unmatched. I don't know how to say it. You just need to work in a dysfunctional organization and then work somewhere where people actually care about putting the product at the center for you to see the difference it makes. And so for me, sometimes I would say, as I said, software development is a very small part of the value stream. And some of these things have to come from the C-level, from the top. So at the C-level, there must be from the organization, from the top up, an agreement that we are not going to focus on projects. We are going to focus on products. So for example, if you work with a team that is steeped in that culture, timelines don't come from the project manager and they don't come from the business, especially timelines around delivery of features. So we might have goals, we might have OKRs, we might say this quarter we want to increase, increase our revenue, but not saying that on June 25th, this feature must be ready, and then asking the people building to fit into that. I think that's a broken way of building software. And so ideally, not even from the product manager. I am a strong advocate that any timelines related to features must come from engineering, and timelines at best are a guess. Like, people actually don't know how long things are going to take. So like, even when you have numbers there, it is just numbers. Like, that's an indicator of this is our plan and this is our degree of confidence. Plans change, and creating that environment such that you empower your teams to do the highest value work, and even to halt a release. So if for example, if teams that are driven by timelines, if you've been told that you have to release this feature by Friday, even when there is a very big problem, the teams will kill themselves to try and ship broken features. And again, I'm an Agile advocate, as you can tell. One of the principles of Agile is being able to maintain a sustainable, constant pace. People should not be working weekends, working until at night, every sprint to get features out. So timelines should come from engineering. Yeah.
Cool. My last question probably is, in a situation where there is a project manager and there's a products manager, who really is doing stakeholder management?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I will say it is a shared responsibility. It depends, one, on the phase the project is in, and also the sort of input that is being requested from the stakeholders. So for example, the product manager I work with, when it comes to features, and it comes to use cases, when it comes to creating product specs, like, she's the one who will do the stakeholder engagement. But when it comes to stakeholder communication, when it comes to check-ins, updates, timelines, delays, progress, I will do the stakeholder communication and management. So it is a shared responsibility, but we have very clear demarcation. So she wouldn't be sharing project statuses or telling them this is when we will deliver it. I will be doing that, and I wouldn't go to a spec meeting and start inserting myself. So it depends on what is being requested from the stakeholders. Yeah.
Awesome. Guys, if you'd like to connect with Mercy, please check out the LinkedIn event details for this webinar. At the very end of those details, there's a LinkedIn and a Twitter link to Mercy. And I'm sure Mercy would love to connect with the guys after this webinar, right?
Yes, definitely.
Cool. Do you have any last remarks? I think we should be winding down now.
No last remarks. I would say I am a big advocate for reading. So I think knowledge is power, and like just finding out what other people are doing, finding out like even reading papers. People write papers on project management, on product management. There's a whole body of knowledge, and there's a lot of wisdom out there that's at your fingertips if you just reach out and grab it. So I would recommend educating yourself on your craft. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. All right. So thank you so much, Mercy. Really insightful presentation. We're really grateful for this. We'll be sharing the slides and the video recording to the group sometime today, or probably by end of day tomorrow, latest. And without any other business, I guess we can end the webinar, and we look forward to our next webinar, which we shall share the details soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Right.